have expressed shock that an institution like the Electoral Commission, INEC, which should be above the political fray, certainly above reproach, would put its reputation at stake for the purpose of an election. Tell us how you arrived at that conclusion.
Well, I arrived at that conclusion looking at the result of Edo State election. And before then, we had looked at Kogi, Bayelsa, and Imo. And we said something fundamental about the last three states. We said election actually is working because with the INEC BVAS, we can see where people altered results. The INEC BVAS showed the number of people accredited, and then you could see that the votes do not match with the number of accreditation. So we praised INEC that this is a step in the right direction. What they need to do in the next election is, we said, upload the form EC8B, the ward collation form. So there is transparency about what happened at the polling unit and what happened at the collation, which seems to be the place where some of the shenanigans occur. And we identified all the presiding officers and the collation officers who we said tampered with the results, because what they have in the BVAS is not what they have in their result sheets. Now, what was strange to us was that in the Edo election, in the Imo, Bayelsa, and Kogi, if you are on the IREV was uploading results and showing us the BVAS IREV figures was showing. So you could see it on the IREV. But in Edo, IREV is the result viewing portal.
Right.
And in Edo, INEC mysteriously removed that. So we couldn't now see what the IREV was showing. Because when INEC gave us in the other three states the IREV, the BVAS report, we matched it with the screenshots we took of the BVAS on the IREV. So now in Edo, they removed that. A major infraction, in my view. Because what you want to show at every time is the transparency.
Absolutely.
INEC is, it's an umpire. So they removed it. So in Edo and now Ondo, the IREV was no more showing the numbers from the BVAS. Now with that, we now saw something very strange, that the number in the accredited by the BVAS, given to us by INEC, a certified copy, now has 100,000 more votes than the one done by the officers at the point of accreditation. Even though we are questioning the point of accreditation, that it looks like there was inflation, the IREV now came more. And then we now said, where did this happen? It turned out it happened in about 794 polling units.
That's quite
800.
Big.
Yeah, it's quite big. Some of them with that wide variance as much as 1,000 votes, and then down all the way to 10, 20 votes. So we figured out that this was a systemic effort to now defray the issue of overvoting. So what you now see in Edo is undervoting. But what happens in an election is that you accredit, then you vote. So there was no way people would have been accredited and did not vote. So this for me was a major damage to something Nigerians have begun to put their trust on. And we are working to see how we can, strengthen them more by saying, show in real time what the BVAS has done. In fact, after the election, reconcile with the back end and upload it to the web so everybody can go there and see what the BVAS are credited.
Well, we have a lot of your material, which we've uploaded, which you can walk us through. But just specifically, you are alleging that there was a lack of transparency in the election.
Correct.
Discrepancies in voter accreditation.
Yes.
Incidents of overvoting,
yes,
in some cases, manipulation at ward collation centers,
yes,
and that the BVAS accreditation record was not transmitted to the result viewing portal or IREV.
Yes.
And who do you hold responsible for all these alleged infractions? Would it be INEC?
INEC. No other person have access to the BVAS or to the viewing portal. So this is INEC. And the reason why they took those decisions, if INEC had taken a decision to say, we will not more show the BVAS accreditation online, we will show it after the election to be sure it's properly synchronized, Nigerians owe an explanation before you take that decision.
Absolutely.
After you've taken that decision, Nigerians still, why did you wait for us to apply to give us. You could have just simply said, all the BVAS records are here uploaded to the web.
Okay, well,
same thing.
Walk us through the figures.
Yes, let's go to slide 13. If you go to page 13 of the slides, you will see, if you can
keep
show
talking,
up
they'll bring it up.
13, yes. So if you go to page 13 of the slide, you will see the key data that we collected from INEC. And those key data tells you 687,427 was what INEC provided to us as the BVAS accreditation, the certified through copy. Now, if you go to the same page 13, you will see that the EC8A accreditation, that is the people that saw the voters, the people that did the accreditation said, we accredited 580,000. So there was no way they could have written a wrong result because they accredited, they saw the voters. Now, when they went to collation, a number of polling units were cancelled, some were removed, and the collation in the form EC8B, which excludes 363 polling units that INEC did not give us the form EC8B, totaling, that's 12 wards with 363 polling units. So we don't know what they entered at the accreditation for those. But that EC8B, the 580,000 dropped to 541,283, meaning that there were cancellations, there were removals. And then when it got to the EC8D, the result declaration form, the state form, where the result was declared, the number of accreditation rose to 604,123.
Right. So
an additional 60,000 between the EC8B and EC8D emerged. So, and we think these are egregious acts of sabotage, because there is no way these numbers will not tell a single story. We can't have multiple stories from the same numbers. And if there is any change in numbers, there will be notes saying 25 wards have been removed. So the numbers of accreditation fell. How did the number of accreditation rise from 541 to 604 at the accreditation? Now, guess what? The used ballot papers used, which means both the valid votes and the invalid votes. All the ballot papers were used was 577,000. So where in heaven did 687,000 people get accredited? And where did 604 emerge in the EC8D, the final result declaration? Which is why I say that the returning officer, who is a professor who works in a university, should have performed the duty of care by asking the right questions. How are these numbers changing across the different collation points? But I guess it's something we will need to find out at some point.
And those figures that you're quoting, all those infractions that you're talking about, ended up favoring one political party.
Yes, of course, APC is a net beneficiary, because if those issues were dealt with, and if we go further down in the presentation, we came up with vote inflation. So BVAS inflation versus EC8A inflation, and then we pointed out the party vote distribution. So in overvoting, APC got a net overvoting score of 24,000 votes. PDP got party distribution. PDP got 1429, where APC got 24,000 additional. If you go to transferred overvoting, that is the overvoting that went from EC8A to EC8B. Because at the EC8B point, the collation officer is supposed to have looked at the IREV, checked the number on the IREV, and then enter only votes that tally with the numbers on the IREV. So in that case, they accredited, they transferred 17,000 more accreditation, 25,000 EC8B accreditation rose, and the total vote cast also rose. So they transferred it, overvoting in 140 polling units. 75% of the 186 PUs with overvoting were transferred. So if you go to the number 4, the fourth insight we showed, we observed the addition of 32,284 votes over what was recorded in Form EC8A for APC. So this is our audit. We could see the trends. We saw every party trying to do one thing or the other, but we saw the net beneficiaries of this.
So obviously, there are a lot of numbers here,
Yes.
and unless somebody is like a number cruncher,
Yes.
like yourself, all this might just be going over their
Yes, it will
head.
be confusing.
But your conclusion, I mean,
Yes.
obviously you have to present, and which is what you're doing,
Yes.
and that's quite important, that you present the evidence that you
Yes.
have. Your conclusion, based on your review of that election, is that it cannot be said to have been credible
Yes.
because it failed to meet the most basic standards of integrity and should
Transparency.
therefore not be allowed to stand.
Yes, that's our view, that INEC should have either called for reruns or redo the elections at that point. You see, the role of INEC as an arbiter is now a strange thing in Nigeria. How they came up with this idea that we finish an action and they just say go to court. It doesn't make sense because court is a different matter altogether.
Rather than INEC
Yes.
itself
INEC
reviewing the work that
reviewing
it
the
has
work.
done
Yes.
and trying to make
Adjustments.
adjustments. I mean, it says you'll go to court and then we'll take. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
Really. And
Totally ridiculous.
That is ceding control.
Yes.
I mean, what's the point of having INEC there?
Absolutely no point.
If they don't run elections,
Yes.
if they don't try and run elections and run them properly.
Absolutely.
I mean,
and review them, because if you look at the law, it allows INEC 7 days to take in administrative queries. So my attitude is that, and we checked other countries. Do other countries conduct post-election? Because people say matter is sub judice, is in court. I said no. We're not talking about the court matter. It's not the court issue. We're talking about the election.
There needs to be a post-mortem.
Post-mortem.
Yeah.
So in the US, they said, immediately after the election, a significant number of polling units are chosen, statistically significant.
Yes.
And the votes manually recounted and ensured that it is consistent with the general result.
Absolutely.
In Mexico, the Wednesday after the election on Saturday, they go back to manual recount, cross-checking of a significantly significant chosen randomly to ensure that the results comply. So the final declaration is always pushed forward. These are the preliminary results coming, and then we can do the final declaration once the numbers are in. In India, they use electronic voting. After the electronic voting, they take all the voting machines and a third party subjects them to cross-check to check that what was recorded in the paper trail is the same thing with what was in the electronic voting machine. I have never seen a situation where you just finish an election, you announce the result and say go to court.
You throw your hands up.
No, that's not the idea of INEC.
No, it doesn't make any sense.
Yes, it doesn't make sense.
To be honest with
The
you.
idea is INEC should be able to say, oh no, this doesn't meet our standard. People complain that collation was moved away from the ward to the local government. INEC will say, go back to those wards and redo that. Or this is the reason why we moved it. They must be explaining at every point in the process. I always give the example of JAMB. When a young girl, Ms. Oma, said she got 300 in JAMB, JAMB said no, she didn't. And the girl said no, that she went and searched and this is the result she got. JAMB said no. They opened their server, printed out their server and said she attempted 4 times. This is the first one she attempted. The result that came back was a genuine result. She attempted a second time and she altered the one on her phone to deceive people. And once that was done, it became clear to everybody that the girl was wrong. So, and the girl eventually owned up that she altered the result. That is what a regulatory institution does.
Absolutely.
They don't say go to court. They come out and defend themselves and said, this is the process we used.
Since you've mentioned court, obviously neither INEC nor the new leadership in Odo State, or for that matter, the presidency, is hearkening to your distress call. In fact, the governor of Edo State now, who won that election, is saying that it's all, fantasy. Do you think the evidence that you've got here would stand up in court?
I do not do my evidence for court. At the Athena Center, we are not interested in what people do with the data. Our major concern is to identify problems and suggest solutions to government. So we don't care what PDP wants to file. We don't care what APC is filing.
No, but what I'm saying is that, I mean, you studied law yourself.
Yes.
I mean, would your evidence stand up in a court of law?
Well, it depends on what they do with the lawyers, how they present the evidence, where they got it from, and how they're able to convince the court on the, facts before the court. The court is going to face the facts before them. If these facts are not before them, well, they will take decision based on the evidential requirements.
Because obviously people are wondering whether there's, the governor of Edo State has raised the issue of a political motive behind the figures that you make.
There was political motive when we did it in Kogi. There was political motive when we said it in Imo. In Imo, we said PDP was not a viable party. They would have lost the election even despite all the shenanigans that happened.
Yes, PDP I remember that because you came here and talked to us
We said in Bayelsa, the governor won, APC will have still lost. Despite that, the rigging came mainly from APC. In Kogi, we said, well, the election will have been inconclusive because the second person didn't make 25% in 2/3 of the local government based on our analysis. And we're hoping that Nigerians are going to get used to evidence-based policy making.
Well, please keep doing what you're doing.
Our language
because it's very important to have some kind of, objective, or, well, let me say independent assessment of those results. I'm putting the fire to the feet of INEC. But you mentioned the fact that some people are suggesting that there's a political motive because you were a member of the PDP. You're no longer in the PDP. That's a party that you were there from the outset.
Yes.
And which helped you to secure a ministership in this country, amongst other top-ranking portfolios. But now you're out of it. Tell us why.
First is, like I said in my letter, and it seems nobody wants to.
No, we read your letter, but we want to go behind the headlines, as they say.
I really want to focus to say, I'm a Nigerian optimist. I believe this country can work. Today I was at an event and I said, look, Nigeria is one country where you go study medicine, you pay 200,000 in Nsukka a year for school fees. So 6 years you spend 1.2 million. Then you go to the US and take the board exam and become a certified doctor. Nigerians every day are being called to the UK and to make them nurses and doctors, because whatever we say of our educational institutions, we are producing people who pass board exams across the world. To study medicine in the US is about $250,000 to $700,000 for the 4 years of studying medicine. So I'm saying to Nigerians, this country can work. What is the problem I see is that if we don't solve these institutional problems, if we don't reform the electoral process, what is the aim of being in a party and going for an election? To come back and go to court and then be arguing about what you got right or wrong. I don't think that is the basis of democracy.
So you're pulling back from that sort of partisan politics completely. It doesn't matter which party.
Yes. So I'm not joining any party for now, and I believe I will come back to the democratic space in due course. But that will be because we've made effort. I want to make this effort as saying to government, you are right on this, you are wrong on that. But this is alternative viewpoint. This is how you can go about it. People told me, why haven't you talked about the tax bill? And I said, we're still analyzing it. We're still looking at it.
Sure.
Yes. When we look at it, we will come out with a position.
But one of your points is that you want to get away from partisan politics in order to focus on political reform.
Yes.